All right, hello and welcome to the live DealerScope webinar today, connecting the consumer to the connected car, which is sponsored by MarketSource. I'm Rob Stott, content editor here at the Consumer Technology Publishing Group, and I'll be hosting today's event. But before we get started, let me take a minute to point out the tips for attendees widget on your console. It's the blue one with the little wrench on it. If you missed any of the tech tips that we played during the video leading up to the webinar, you can always click on this widget for more information. Also, be sure to keep the conversation going throughout today's webinar and after the event on Twitter. You can use the hashtag #BetterSales, which we will be monitoring throughout today's webinar. Our presenters today for MarketSource are Lisa Walsh, the Automotive Practice Lead, and Pete Maxwell, Director of Client Services. As an Automotive Practice Lead, Lisa leverages MarketSource's best practices and intellectual property to define success scenarios, model potential performance outcomes, and design and implement sales and service teams focused on increasing client sales and their presence in the marketplace. Lisa has over 30 years of experience in the automotive industry, holding the titles of General Manager, Business Development Manager, and President at several dealerships, and while working directly for some of the biggest names in the automotive industry. Pete Maxwell brings to the table over 25 years of automotive experience, specializing in automobile dealership development and consulting. Pete's team at MarketSource partners with automotive and related industry clients to design, implement, and manage sales solutions. Their fully managed sales solutions team allows clients to focus more on their strategy while they provide the execution to drive sales and business process results. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Lisa and Pete. Guys, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks a lot, Rob. So, Lisa, we hear the expression all the time, but what do we really mean by the connected car?
Well, interestingly enough, there are many different opinions on the definition of a connected car. And as you can see from the slide, Claudia Bacco, the managing director of RCR Wireless, believes that the connected car intersects our left and right brain, so basically our logical and emotional thinking. The future is about mobility, and the car is one way to enable this, in her opinion. Wikipedia states that a connected car is a vehicle that's equipped with internet access and usually a wireless local area network. This allows the vehicle to share internet access with other devices both inside and outside the vehicle. Now, Pete, connected cars are an emerging disruptor, and they currently represent a very large and rapidly accelerating growth opportunity. A report from IHS Automotive forecasts global connected car sales to expand at a compounded annual growth rate of 19%, from about 25 million in 2015 to almost 77 million in 2022.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yes. Also, McKinsey & Company's research indicates that by 2020, over 90% of the cars sold are likely to be connected, and every one of those is going to have its own connection to the cloud. So this means that cars won't depend on other external devices such as smartphones for connectivity. So Pete, considering the impending disruption, connected car represents the beginning of a shift for OEMs away from a focus on product being the key differentiator. Innovations in the products and the manufacturing process have created parity across the traditional attributes that differentiate vehicles. Now, I think as Rob mentioned in our bio, we've got 25 and 30 plus years in the business, so we've been around a long time. And years ago, vehicle fleets were comprised of bad and good cars. Right. So that's really changed over the years. And now consumers have a choice between good and great cars. So they've come to expect a lot more from their automotive experience.
So in other words, the consumer value is shifting from the traditional attributes to those of convenience and connectivity. And I guess that's what we mean by the connected car.
Yes, exactly.
Is there much buzz around the connected car?
Well, let's take a look at this slide. This illustrates the social media mentions regarding the connected car. And as you can see, in just 6 months, there were approximately 70,000 mentions. Now, millennials comprised upwards of 60% of all the blog mentions.
That's not really surprising, is it?
No, not considering that they currently have the highest level of interest and adoption of current connected car features. So, to me, the biggest and most important statistic is that overall sentiment is 95% favorable.
That's great.
Yeah, so the overall numbers are very impressive considering the limited awareness regarding the connected car amongst the general population. So, Pete, what do consumers think about connected car?
Well, if you look at this slide, not much.
Exactly.
In fact, 44% of consumers are completely unaware of what connected car features are. And of the 55% that have heard about it, most of them aren't even clear about what it will do for them.
Wow. So, do you agree that the current statistics are impacted by the lack of awareness and understanding of all the connected car features out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at this Business Insider study, most consumers think about streaming music, traffic alerts, and surfing the internet when they think about connected car.
Right.
Yeah, think of it this way. And okay, you had the old person reference a minute ago, but way back in 1996 when the first flip phone was introduced, most people weren't thinking about using their phone to watch video or monitor their security system or film HD video. Heck, we even use it now to answer trivia questions. Remember, that was like 4 years before Google was even founded, and now
Right.
Google's a verb, right?
Right.
Most people thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just get my email on my phone? And I can remember people saying, why the heck would I get a camera on my phone?
Sure.
But I guess one big question is, how can this be monetized? Do consumers really want to pay for this?
Well, that is the million-dollar question. So this slide represents how the 14% of customers that are familiar with connected car would be willing to pay for services. So a couple things jump out at me here. The first is that 28% of them said that they would be willing to pay a monthly fee via their credit card or PayPal.
That's 28% of the 14%, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Another 25% would be interested in having free services allowing for advertising. So huge opportunity there.
Kind of like Facebook, and you put up with the ads so you can...
Exactly. And another 13% would be willing to do a single purchase for a pre-qualified period. So let's say maybe at the time of delivery they purchase a 3 or 4 year subscription.
Gotcha.
So a McKinsey & Company survey indicated that only 35% of all new car buyers, though, said that they would be willing to spend an additional $100 for smartphone integration. And only 21% said they'd be willing to pay for a subscription base for connectivity services. So,
of course, I guess if you had surveyed all those cell phone customers back in 1996, their willingness to pay for services would have been pretty similar. I mean, clearly it's an awareness issue, right?
sure.
I mean, so, similar to mobile phone disruption, the leading edge consumers, which are mostly millennials, they'll be adopting and even demanding many of the connected car features and benefits. That makes them mainstream and then dramatically increases the number of customers willing to pay for them.
Sure. So upon seeing this slide, you're probably thinking, why is this slide about cell phones in this presentation? Well, many believe that the connected car has the ability to fundamentally change the way in which profits are distributed in the automotive value chain.
Okay.
So therefore, we can derive learnings from industries that have gone through similar disruptions previously, such as the internet, television, and mobile phones, to name a few. So for the mobile phone industry, the transition from feature phones to smartphones triggered a redistribution of profits from hardware to software, with the key determining success factors being the control of app stores and advertising. So one thing we were talking about earlier, before we got on the call here, is car phones were the original kind of cell phones, and those were actually created in 1946. So it's from 1946 until I believe you said 1996
right.
that we actually went to the flip phone. So there was a long period of time there. And I think when we talk about connected car, to some degree, OnStar, Sirius, and XM have been around for a while.
Right.
And I think we're in that similar phase where now we're going to see a trajectory very similar to what we've got here with the cell phone and the smartphone, and you can see the enormous growth.
We're kind of at a tipping point.
Absolutely. It's amazing to see how quickly the revenue streams in the industry shifted towards the service and content providers and away from the handset manufacturers. Do you realize that all but 2 manufacturers in this space lose money on each handset that's sold?
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Who do you think the 2 are?
One of them's got to be Apple, right?
Absolutely. One is Apple and the other is Samsung. So those are the only 2 companies that are able to sell hardware at a profit, with Apple averaging about $180 a unit and Samsung is at about $48 a unit. So Apple is making 3 times more profitable at this point than Samsung.
Huh. Well, in addition, think about it. Companies like Google and Amazon have been able to introduce new business models, such as monetizing services and advertisements, by owning the critical control points.
Sure.
For example, did you realize that Google makes about $3.40 a year per Android device from mobile advertisement due to the fact that it controls the operating system, the App Store, and the ad platform?
Wow.
And as connectivity becomes a bigger part of an automobile, companies from other industries, such as telecom and software, will likely become key players similar to the cell phone industry. In fact, last year, Mark Fields, president and CEO of Ford Motor Company, raised concerns about this, noting that car makers face the risk of becoming subordinate to the business models of other industries as new types of firms enter the auto trade. So I guess connectivity has the potential to fundamentally change the way profits are distributed in the automotive environment.
Absolutely. So, Pete, where do you think we go with this?
Well, everything's connected, right? With the Internet of Things, everything from our heating and air conditioning, home security, yard maintenance, and lighting, just to name a few, are all connected. So connecting our cars makes sense. Perhaps they become the hub.
Sure.
This slide just kind of shows the whole ecosystem of the connected car. Includes many household names and many names that are already engaged in the IoT. Perhaps the real question is, are our dealerships prepared to deal with the complexity that comes with this? As we've been discussing, many consumers have limited awareness of the connected car, but the younger, leading-edge consumers wants technology, and as vehicles become more technologically complex, the demands of the skill and knowledge of the dealership salespeople will become even greater. You know, in the old days, you remember the old days, a customer would physically shop 7 dealerships before they made a final purchase decision.
Just 7? I thought it was more like 10 or 11.
It felt like a lot more, didn't it? Well, today they can eliminate up to 5 or 6 while they shop on their smartphones in the fast food drive-thru.
And as you can see from the slide that we're working on here, they're having a little technical difficulties. I apologize for that. But as you can see from the slide, there are multiple verticals seeking to gain customer awareness and utilization. It's going to be imperative that OEMs provide training and guidance to dealerships to align the employee consultative selling skills with the customer desires through a personalized omni-channel approach. Telecom and IT software will need buy-in at the dealership level in order to ensure that customers are made aware of the features and benefits of their offerings, and that they're offered the opportunity to purchase subscriptions at the time of delivery. Many of our customers in this space constantly ask us and have expressed to us that they have little to no visibility into the customers that are purchasing vehicles, new vehicles at the dealership that have hardware installed. For example, in an internet hotspot connection. IT and software providers are realizing the same issues. That is why it will be extremely important that companies in this space find a way to train dealership personnel on their products, or potentially consider installing resources trained to sell their products in high-volume dealerships.
Hey, Lisa, don't we provide some of our current clients with similar services at, say, large retailers and electronic stores?
Yes, that's right. That, combined with our experience on improving performance on the showroom floor, in the F&I department, and in fixed operations, gives us unique capabilities to help facilitate connected car sales.
You know, don't most people think salespeople are unnecessary?
Well, that's what I would have thought, but the research shows differently on this study from AutoTrader. It's very interesting, and it debunks the idea that customers don't need a salesperson. 84% of consumers want to buy a car in person, and another 43% consider the dealership a place to learn.
Huh.
Now, interestingly, of those customers, only 17 out of 4,002 customers surveyed prefer the current car buying process.
17 out of 4,000? I mean, that's like pretty close to 0, right?
Exactly. So certainly there is room for improvement.
Where were those 17 people when I was somewhere?
Exactly. So here's another myth that really resonates with me. This is what my salespeople used to always tell me when I was a dealer and a manager. The lowest price will always win. Reality is that 54% of the customers would buy from a dealership with their preferred experience over the lowest price. And 73% are willing to drive farther for a great salesperson.
So in the absence of value, no price is low enough. But if we provide enough value, we can overcome the price objection.
Exactly.
Shocking. You know, a survey by Deloitte shows that consumers' current purchasing pain points are a lack of guidance and expertise, a lack of personalization, and a lack of enjoyment. I guess other than those 17 people, right?
Right, exactly.
In many cases, these points are not addressed by the current sales process. Customers that define that first step of personalization as providing them with a good experience to start a conversation about what their purposes and needs are in relationship to a car. The focus needs to be on what brings the most value to them. This way, customers feel provided with a highly personalized suggestion based on an overall assessment of available data.
Sure. So needs-based consulting caters to all customer types. And I think, Pete, this is especially important to realize that customers are very aware of algorithms that can provide them with one-of-a-kind solutions. Think music streaming, automated, customized lists based on your initial selection.
Right.
So millennial customers are clearly an enormous commercial force to be reckoned with, commanding both trend-setting power and tremendous spending power as well. And this millennial spending power encompasses both their own personal spending. It's estimated they'll be spending $200 billion annually by 2017 and $10 trillion over their lifetimes as consumers, and that's in the United States alone.
Wow. Interestingly enough, that same Deloitte study, it indicated that almost 40% of millennials believe that the dealership salesperson is very influential in their purchase decision. That's as opposed to 27% of older generation.
Very interesting.
It is. Once again, that indicates, I think, that the salespeople will continue to be a key piece of the puzzle.
Why do you think that is?
It's a good question. Influential. That could be that salesperson influences them to buy at a different dealership.
Good point, with a poor experience.
With a poor experience, or by engaging the customer in a personalized, authentic experience to buy there. Maybe, again, it's less about the product and more about the experience. In fact, millennials crave a true, authentic, personalized experience. And as customer, this is interesting, they care about your values as a customer. In fact, more than half of millennials will make an effort to buy products from companies that support the causes they care about. How's that for a unique why buy here?
It is, and it goes back to price isn't the only driver.
Absolutely. So we also know that about 20% of consumers are early adopters or leading edge consumers. I say guys because for the most part they are male.
Right.
They're mostly young, they're employed full-time, and they love to drive just for the fun of it, and they love to drive a new car.
And that's so interesting because just 6 or 7 years ago, we were hearing how new vehicle sales are going to be in danger over the years because the millennials really weren't as interested in driving and didn't care nearly as much about car ownership.
Well, that could be because we didn't take into consideration the fact that at that time, most of the millennials were living in cities, were underemployed, and now that the economy has shifted, they're moving to the suburbs, they have full-time jobs, and they're buying vehicles. So, it's a matter of having the right data, isn't it? In fact, LECs, or leading-edge consumers, value entertainment, but they're much more willing to pay for vehicle data tracking. Things like data tracking technology, tracking usage, running diagnostics, and recording accident data.
Wow, that's great. And this is an awesome opportunity for dealership service departments as well as independent repair facilities to develop and maintain long-term relationships. And I think on the earlier slide we saw how consumers wanted to pay for it. Well, one of the interesting things is this value entertainment also provides information that can be sent to third-party providers that OEMs can receive revenue from, therefore reducing cost to customers for the information that they're utilizing.
Yeah, and one of the things that dealers see as a risk is, that over-the-air installation, that some of those software updates don't need to be done at the dealership anymore. They can be done at the customer's convenience where they want it to be.
Yes, and I was reading a study the other day that indicated that OEMs, it costs them about $400 to $500 for each warranty repair when cars need to go into the dealership to get a software update. So obviously they could realize a lot of savings if they could do that over the air. So this slide was very interesting to me. This slide shows the current 5-year vehicle life cycle expenditure. So this is the total amount that people spend on their vehicle over that term. And as you can see, 53% of the total is basically on the vehicle purchase price. And then another 17% is on insurance, 14% is on operations, and what's really interesting is the 6% is on connectivity, so entertainment, navigation, adaptive driving, and hardware. So one thing that I think is going to happen in this, and here again we go back because we've been in the business a long time, is over the years, 5 years from now, customers are just going to expect that this navigation and the hardware is in the vehicle with the standard price.
Right.
And I think back to way back when we started selling vehicles where, quite frankly, a radio was an option, air conditioning was an option, power windows was an option.
You mean you could have any color you want except as long
Come
as the
on,
color's
Pete.
black?
It was not that long ago. But anyway, so what I'm saying though is now those are all features that air conditioning and radio specifically that are in practically 100% of the vehicles. So over the years, OEMs are going to, they're going to realize much less revenue from this hardware.
So that higher content rather than lower price, right?
Yeah, so when you look at this slide, the most important part is the usage-based subscription. So it's basically called the driver's time and attention. Well, that's what we've been talking about, usage-based subscriptions. That's actually less than 0.5%, so it doesn't register at all. That's why it's 0 on here. So, we know that's where the dramatic revenue increase is going to be in the future. So how do we realize that?
The best time to get a consumer or customer enrollment is at the time of sale, but only if dealerships and their salespeople are prepared to have those engaging conversations.
Makes sense. So, let me ask you this. How about putting it on the F&I menu?
Lisa, if we put everything on the menu that people want to sell through a car dealership, those menus will look more like they're a diner from New Jersey
No kidding.
than something in a dealership. Surveys say that people want to buy from people at the end of the day, and they want personalized experiences. Frankly, I just believe dealers need to learn how to adapt.
Sure.
And not only the dealers. This McKinsey study outlined some of the challenges facing the OEMs. OEMs need to build up skills for software development to match their new competitors' capabilities and fulfill requirements, things such as cybersecurity and faster innovation cycles. And this involves moving to a software development model based on a top in-house talent in an agile, fast-paced development structure, complemented by capabilities of partners in a common ecosystem. And this structure allows for tighter end-to-end control over the user experience. Think companies like Tesla, Google, Apple. They develop all of their core software themselves.
Sure.
But generally, OEMs have outsourced large parts of their software development. Acquisitions of software companies are one option. Bring in more in-house talent that way. And some automotive suppliers have taken to that recently, or partnering with software developers.
So connectivity has the potential to shift significant market share between OEMs. Loyalty to a brand may be challenged by the availability of connectivity functionality, and that's evidenced by the fact that up to 20% of consumers will be willing to switch brands if an OEM offered important features exclusively.
So you're saying that somebody that's loyal to General Motors would be willing to switch to Ford if Ford had a particular connectivity feature that they wanted?
Yes, particular, almost like, let's say, when the iPhone came out. So if there was something like that that was just so unique, yes, surveys indicate that 20% of consumers will be willing to switch brands.
Wow.
So not surprisingly, leading-edge consumers who would consider switching are much higher, and at almost 41% of the total.
With the millennials, and they're becoming a bigger part of the whole equation, right?
Sure. So another big challenge is how to ensure that customers can experience a consistent, consultative, connected car immersion, along with the opportunity to purchase additional connected car services at dealerships. But to me, Pete, the big question is this. What's in it for the dealership? Why do they need to worry or care about this?
That's a good question. But Lisa, if we're building vehicles that meet today's tech-savvy consumer who wants to always be connected, that in that way, we should be interacting with them the way they want to, right?
Makes sense.
Offer ultra convenience, always be connected, address their security concerns. I travel a whole lot, right? So a couple weeks ago, I'm standing in the airport waiting for my bag. I drop my iPhone, and it just shatters from top to bottom, side to side.
I think we've all been there.
Complete spider web, right? So it's about 6 o'clock. I'm panicking because I got another flight in 2 days, and I just take a risk, and I'm going to drive over to the Apple store. I got no appointment. So I drive over to the store. I walk in. I'm immediately greeted warmly and sincerely by a millennial, right, who just treats me with lots of respect and lets me know, hey, this could take a while because I don't have an appointment. I'm thinking to myself, this is just going to be a disaster the whole time, right? So get some information. She tells me that they'll text me as soon as they're ready, and while we're still having a conversation, through my spiderweb screen, I see this test we're ready for us, and I walk back to the Genius Bar. That's a great name, too. So they do run a diagnostic and make sure everything on the phone is okay. Then they say it's going to be about an hour before my phone's fixed. They take the phone, and I just go wander around the mall for about 45 minutes. I come back. I meet a third person, again, millennial, who greets me warmly and says, here's your phone. It's all working. We tested it out together. He takes my $125, which to me at that point is an absolute bargain to get my phone fixed. I'm in and out of there in less than an hour and a half. Didn't have an appointment. I'm home, and the most important thing that I carry with me on a daily basis is now working and working well. I just say that because right prior to that, I'd had a conversation with a dealer about the salespeople, and he's concerned about what it costs to put a salesperson on the floor and how many salespeople you need to have. Let me ask you, this was an amazing thing because when I got home, I did a little Glassdoor research just to find out what does an Apple salesperson in an Apple store make. Have you got any idea? Take a guess.
I have no idea. $30 an hour.
$15 an hour is the average salary paid to an employee in an Apple store nationwide.
Wow.
$15.
That's not even minimum wage in some areas.
They get benefits, but they work retail hours, so Saturdays, Sundays, weekends, nights, the whole bit. And I think the key thing is they work for a brand that they love.
Sure.
They have a place that they feel with their peers is a cool place to work, and they get to talk about technology. I mean, all of those things are kind of what we need to be looking at in a dealership experience, right? Brand loyalty, feel like it's a great place to work. It's going to be about the technology. Maybe it's time for us to take a little look at the model and how our sales processes are.
Sure.
I believe what's in it for the dealer at the end of the day is survival. We've already discussed how vehicle differentiation is going to be based on convenience and buying experience, right? I mean, millennials, a large and growing segment, want a personalized buying experience. It's going to require a different sales process, and I'm afraid to say this, but in many cases, I think it's going to require different salespeople as well.
I think so too, and I think one last thing to touch on is, I know you already like Apple products, but I'm sure that experience made you even more loyal to the brand.
It had to.
And
I mean,
even less about the price if it ever was an issue.
Absolutely. I understand the sevens out, so my son's the leading edge consumer, and in maybe 60 days I'll follow along, right?
Exactly.
So, to sum it up, the connected car is a disruptive technology. Consumers today have limited awareness, and dealerships, frankly, have limited capability and interest. The companies that figure out a way to play or partner with a company that can play in the dealership space will have a decided advantage.
Yes, that's true. And MarketSource has a track record of training and assisted selling in the dealership space, and we're also an expert in workforce optimization.
That's great. So, Rob, I understand we've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, you guys covered quite a bit today, so a lot of great information, and thank you for that. And it looks like we did receive some questions in the Q&A area at the bottom of your screen there, so let's just quickly run through a few. First up, is there an answer to improving dealerships' ability to handle these conversations? Is it better training or better people?
You know, that's one of those loaded questions. Frankly, I think it's probably a combination of both. I think we need to take a look at who we have in our dealerships, and the last person to be talking about age is me, right? But at the end of the day, I think we need to focus on millennials as part of our workforce. They've grown, and I think I looked at an NADA study recently that they're somewhere less than 30% of our workforce, but they present a significant part of turnover. Another thing is that our average dealership employee, women are employed at about 18% of dealership employees, and sadly, they represent about 91% of turnover. So
right.
I think it's both. It's got to be better people, but certainly it needs to be better leadership and better training.
Cool. All right. So how does all of this play into the dealership's internet strategy?
Well, we talked earlier about the fact that a customer used to shop physically at 7 different dealerships, and today their goal online is to eliminate 7 dealerships, and they can do that from the convenience of their iPhone that doesn't have a spider web screen, right? So if I'm eliminating dealerships, I'm narrowing it down to the 1 or 2 or 3 that provide those needs, and it's going to be the dealerships that talk about what's important to me, and certainly part of that's price, but certainly a lot of it's got to do with the features that I want. How do you play with the connectivity? What's my buying experience going to be like? Am I going to have to go through a long and drawn-out process? We said it earlier, in the absence of anything else, it's always going to be about price. But if you provide enough value, I think price doesn't become as much of a differentiator.
And I think another thing that we've seen that a lot of customers have a lot of frustration with the internet experience because the dealers refuse to give them, in a lot of cases, the information that they're seeking to make it more likely that they will come into the dealership.
I'll give you an example. We do some mystery shopping, and I portrayed myself as a customer who was going to be moving to the particular area, and that I had would be moving in about 6 weeks, wanted to buy my vehicle in that town, and that I had a boat and trailer of about 10,000 pounds, and I wanted to tow it. And I would get internet responses such as, "Thank you for your internet inquiry. If I can be of any further assistance, let me know." And I went, "Well, how much more do you need to know about me? I'm moving to your area. I got a boat." And I asked somebody, in fact, my son, I said, "How would you have handled that?" And he said, "I would have sent you every link there was to marinas and boat ramps and anything else because, I don't want to engage you at a level that's personal, not on a level that's
Very
price."
impersonal.
All right. Next question. So do you guys think these products should be sold in the finance office or as part of the menu sell?
We talked about the menu, right? I mean, the bigger we get that menu, the more cluttered it gets, the harder it's going to become to break through that clutter. I think F&I plays a major role, certainly, and I think that needs to be a part of it because that's where the transaction is consummated. But I think our salespeople, our product specialists, our guides on this buyer's journey have to be willing and able to have those conversations right then and there. And maybe it's a store within a store. Maybe it's a kiosk-based kind of a conversation that explains the technology. Maybe that's the bridge from today's salesperson to something closer to that Apple experience that we have some people in there.
Well, because I think on another note on that, too, I think that customers would tell you, a lot of folks that have connected car, that they really don't understand a lot about it. They don't know the capabilities. Their salesperson was unable to explain it even after they had it. So that goes right to what you were talking about. It needs to be incorporated early in the process by asking questions of how customers use their car so we can incorporate those into how the features and benefits would really mean something to them and enhance their experience.
Rob, any others?
Yeah, so we got one question. One of our listeners wanted to know if you guys have seen any automobile companies that have a dedicated person to train either salespeople or customers on connected car tech.
I haven't seen a specific connected car trainer. I have seen technology trainers, and for a while there, several of the OEMs were providing assistance to dealers to put somebody in to explain features and benefits on the higher tech pieces. But not specifically on the connected car piece.
Other than some event-based training. I have seen some event-based training, Rob, where occasionally they may bring folks, salespeople from the dealership into a certain region and do a 2 or 3 hour training class. I do know of a few OEMs that have a few what they would call connected car specialists out in the market. But from my experience and what I've seen, if you've got a region where you have maybe 500 dealerships and you've got 2 resources. So this obviously is, there's not a lot of awareness now at the sales level, and that's not as effective as at touching the salespeople, especially when the overall turnover, female sales turnover is 91%. I believe overall salespeople turnover at the dealership level is about, according to the 888 study, 65% annually.
72%.
Yeah, so you've got some moving targets there. So that was one of our thoughts, that if you've got training at that store level, but if you could have some connected car specialists in the dealership, they're there at the time of delivery, where those salespeople can almost, it's kind of the safety valve where, I'm not the connected car expert, but here that person is, that they can talk to your customers about it. And it could be on behalf of these other providers that are looking for the subscriptions, that they could help fund those folks, because they could be receiving the revenue from the annual subscriptions that are purchased. So, and I think eventually it's going to be more mainstream. But how do we get to that point where it's a reflex and everyone understands it? And I think that's going to require a lot of training.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, looks like we're just about out of time. So I know any other questions that we might have in our queue, we'll do our best. We'll have access to afterwards, and do our best to get back to you guys through email and whatnot. And yeah, so just wanted to say on behalf of Dealerscope and MarketSource. Thank you for attending today's webinar. And be sure to check out our webinar page to get information on all of our archived and upcoming webinars. And if you would just take a minute to fill out the brief feedback survey that will appear on your next screen, or on your screen next, we would be grateful. So your feedback will definitely help us to influence content and future webinars. So I hope to see you at the next Dealerscope webinar.